Imagine a world where Donald Trump never made it to the White House. That world could have been a reality if Barack Obama had remained President of the United States by changing the U.S. Constitution. That carries more consequences than you can imagine. This time we will explore an alternate world where Obama is still president. Ready to travel to a parallel dimension? What made Obama's presidency special? You have to remember that 2008 was one of the darkest years for the U.S. economy after the economic bubble they were bragging so much about finally burst. The United States was in a difficult situation when Obama took office in 2009. The economy was in recession, unemployment was at its highest point since the Great Depression, and public confidence in government was in decline. Obama pledged to address these challenges, and his administration implemented a series of policies to stimulate the economy, create jobs, and protect Americans from financial abuses. Under Obama's leadership, the U.S. economy gradually recovered. Unemployment fell to a single-digit level, and GDP grew at a healthy pace. But how did Obama address these problems and succeed in improving the lives of Americans? Let's take it one step at a time. On the economic front, Obama created 3 laws that succeeded in beating the recession. The first was the Economic Recovery and Relief Reauthorization Act of 2009. This law provided $787 billion in fiscal stimulus and infrastructure spending to help the economy recover. The second was the Dodd-Frank Act's Consumer Protection, Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Rulemaking Act. This law reformed financial regulation to prevent future financial crises. And finally, the Affordable Care Act. This law expanded access to affordable health care to millions of Americans. The ACA provided coverage for people with pre-existing conditions, prohibited gender and age discrimination, and allowed parents to keep their children on their health coverage until age 26. And Obama's presidency not only had an effect within U.S. soil, as he also starred in some events that had consequences in other countries. He signed an agreement to re-establish diplomatic relations with Cuba in 2015. This agreement was an important step towards the normalization of relations between the two countries that had been at odds for decades. Not only that, but he was also a strong supporter of the Paris Climate Agreement, which was adopted by 195 countries in 2015. The agreement focuses on reducing greenhouse gas emissions to combat climate change. He was even the president who finally took down one of the most dangerous terrorists in history, Osama bin Laden. But pay attention to this. Don't get the wrong idea. I know that so far it would seem that we are praising Obama's entire term in office, but the truth is that like any other politician, he also made mistakes, and some of his failures led to negative consequences. And of course we are going to expose it. In 2010, BP's Deepwater Horizon oil well exploded, causing an oil spill that polluted the Gulf of Mexico. The spill was the worst environmental disaster in U.S. history, and caused widespread damage to marine life and the environment. It could be said that Obama had no responsibility for this accident and that it was just something that happened during his term in office, but the same cannot be said about his other failures. Obama increased the number of U.S. troops in Afghanistan in 2009 in an effort to defeat the Taliban. However, the war remained an uphill struggle, and Obama announced the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan in 2014. And this was not the only war in which Obama intervened. In 2011, he authorized a military operation in Libya to overthrow Libyan leader Muammar al-Gaddafi. The intervention was successful in toppling Gaddafi, but it also led to a protracted civil war and the fragmentation of the country. Now that we know the most relevant details of this president's tenure, it's time to explore the alternative history. What would it all look like today if Obama were to remain president? Let's find out. To explore this alternative, we first need to be clear about what it would take for Obama to hold power for another 7 years. And we don't have to go far to find a good example. In 1999, one of the most infamous characters in history won the presidency of one of the countries with the greatest potential in the world. That year, Hugo Chavez Frias came to power and took control of Venezuela. And one of Chavez's first moves was to change the constitution. The original law said that a president could not be re-elected and was only entitled to one 4-year term. However, Chavez changed this and the Constitution now allowed for 2 6-year terms. When that term was about to expire, he changed the Constitution once again to allow unlimited nominations. To get permission to make each of these changes, Chavez took power away from the Congress and the people were called to vote in a referendum. To this day, the results of each of these referendums is questioned, and some experts believe they were manipulated by the Venezuelan government, but still they serve as a perfect example. Suppose that in 2015, when his term was about to end, Obama refused to let go of power. US and Venezuelan politics are very different, so it would be more complicated to change the Constitution if Obama felt like it. For Obama to have been able to extend his presidential term, he would have had to get the 22nd Amendment repealed. This would have required 2/3 of both houses of Congress to pass a resolution proposing the amendment, and 3/4 of the states to ratify it. It was highly unlikely that Obama would have been able to get Amendment 22 repealed. The Republican Party controlled the House and Senate in 2016, and it was unlikely that Republicans would have supported an amendment that would have prevented them from running Donald Trump for re-election in 2020. In addition, most Americans were satisfied with the 2-term presidential term limit, with one 2016 poll even finding that 63% of Americans supported a 2-term limit. It was virtually impossible for Obama to have extended his presidential term in 2016. But what would have happened if he had succeeded? Let's say that either through corruption or spectacular communication, Obama would have learned a lesson from Chavez and convinced Congress to change the U.S. Constitution. Had he succeeded, he would have had to face a strong campaign and a complicated election, and knowing how U.S. politics works, it would not have been as easy for him to manufacture results as it was for Chavez. So let's assume that Obama succeeds in convincing the United States that he deserves to continue to govern, but it would not be easy for him to create the unlimited mandate law. So let's go back further in the history of the country. Franklin Roosevelt was President of the United States for 4 full terms. In fact, that's why the 2-term law was created. Maybe it's not so hard to appeal to the conservative side of Americans who believe that everything was better before and convince them that 4 terms is not so bad. So Obama's campaign is a success, and after an arduous process, the Congress and the people side with him. Obama has 8 years of extension in his term and continues to be President of the United States until this very year. That being said, how would America be today? Let's answer that question. So could have been an extended Obama term. On the economy, Obama would surely have continued to work to create jobs, reduce poverty, and increase access to education and health care. He also would have continued to promote policies that support American business and innovation, as well as the changes he would have made to the healthcare system, as he would have continued to expand access to affordable healthcare, especially for low-income people. His record also indicates that he would have been involved in environmental protection issues in education, but the biggest change Obama would have made is that he would definitely continue to support the U.S. military and America's allies in fighting terrorism and fighting for peace. Admittedly, Biden has been very conservative in his treatment of the troops and the military. Based on the record of America's first African-American president, if he were to remain president of the country, it is clear that the current conflicts between Russia and Ukraine or the invasion of Gaza would have had more U.S. intervention. But don't think that this is necessarily a good thing, because it would increase disagreements between Russia and the United States. It has become clear that Obama's presidency was quite unique for the world. It has been interesting to reflect on all the possibilities for the United States if this president were to rule indefinitely. What do you think about it? How do you imagine America being ruled forever by Barack Obama? I hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time.